On his return, Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa called on opposition parties to join him in resolving the current crisis. He left Finance Minister Mthuli Ncube at the World Economic Forum in Davos in Switzerland to continue with the work of attracting investment. So let's go now to Switzerland. Minister Ncube joins us on the line. Minister, thank you very much. Before we talk about the financial nitty-gritty, we're hearing of very worrying things coming out of Zimbabwe. 12 people killed, violent protests and a clampdown by security forces, some talking about excessive force being used. Can you say what was going on before you got on the plane to go to Switzerland?
Well, President Mnangagwa issued a statement this morning to say that violence has no place in our economic development, in our dialogue nationally. And he has called on us to get into dialogue with everyone so that we can move in peace and move forward with the economic reform agenda. Indeed, Zimbabwe is open for business. We're attracting investment. And my message here in Davos is exactly that, which is, look, we want to engage with the international community, re-engage with others. We cannot go it alone. And we're aware that Zimbabwe also presents incredible opportunities for foreign investors who are availing these opportunities to them, ranging from privatization opportunities in the telecom sector, the banking sector, the mining sector, and also opportunities in the mining sector directly in terms of private investors. We're expecting something like $8 billion to be invested in 2 to 3 years in the sector, in platinum, in lithium, in the diamond sector, right across the board. That will give us about $24 billion in revenues. We're availing all these opportunities to investors. That is our message, that Zimbabwe is open for business. We're serious about reforms, but we can't go it alone. We need the international community to support us, Minister, as well as the rest of Africa to do that.
Minister, isn't that message completely hollow when there are reports of security forces use excessive violence against alleged looters, for example, of not giving people their rights when they go to prisons, when they're awaiting trial? Surely that message is hollow. I'm asking you for an honest assessment of what's going on the ground in Zimbabwe right now.
No, the issue of human rights, which I think you're referring to, is enshrined in our constitution, and Zimbabwe always aspires to abide by its constitution, which was created out of an inclusive process. President Mnangagwa this morning has issued a very clear statement that he does not condone any form of violence on either side of this, either in the sense of the protesters themselves or in the sense of those who are supposed to enforce the law. This kind of violence is not welcome. So he's determined to bring sanity to the issue and make sure that human rights are observed, people are protected, property is protected, and he's calling for dialogue as a way forward to resolve the situation in Zimbabwe so that we can see these reforms through for the betterment of the economy, for the betterment of our society, so that we can achieve that vision 2030 of being an upper middle income country.
Were you alarmed when your own government switched off the internet? Surely you must know that's awful for investment.
The switching off the internet was a very temporary and also a tactical strategy to try to contain the organizational capacity of protesters. That's how we understood it. The internet was actually switched on back again when it was felt that the situation was under control. So that was merely a strategy for managing the security situation on the ground and to secure, create a more secure environment for everyone to protect their property.
All right, Emmerson Mnangagwa initially saying that it would take 100 days to start stimulating the economy. Now, a year later, it sounds like this is incredible economic pain. How did he fail? How did your government fail so dismally?
No, the government has not failed, neither has it failed dismally. This is an economic reform process. Any reform is painful. The patient needs to go through pain in order to be saved, in order to live. This is normal in an economic reform process. I remember that Zimbabwe has been going down for the past 20 years. The economy has been rotting away, and this is an attempt now kickstart it. But as you do that, obviously we have to go through a lot of pain as we try to restructure it. And we've made progress. If you look at what we've done since September, we've actually instituted fiscal discipline to make sure that government expenditures stays within limits. We live within our means as government. We were expanding revenues in terms of the way we tax people, ensuring there's compliance. So there's discipline. And also we achieve what you call a primary surplus in our budget process. We're moving on to deal with the current account deficit as well equally by restricting those imports that we think fall in the luxury category. We'll be moving on now to deal with the currency issue, currency reform issues. So very clear in our agenda. At the same time and in parallel, we're pushing forward with the privatization agenda for telecoms, for the infrastructure sector, for the mining sector, right across the board. We'll make sure that privatization becomes the norm in terms of creating this private sector-led economy that we aspire towards. If you look at the agricultural sector, again, we're working on improving productivity, investing in the sector, be it in the form of fertilizer, providing seed, making sure that there's irrigation equipment to irrigate. So the tourism, potential is enormous. So we have a very broad economic reform agenda, and the projects, in a sense, are really a result of some of that pain as we go through this reform agenda, which, in our view, will create jobs and create opportunity. And we like to walk
but Minister,
with them in the path with all the Zimbabweans, and we're calling for passions rather than passions.
But can we agree this is a year after very serious promises about a reform, about a turnaround? You are heavily indebted. There are fuel shortages, even shortages of food, apparently. Inflation is running at 31%. It sounds like a mess.
First of all, the economic reform agenda is not a year old. The economic reform agenda was launched on 4th of October in 2017, so it is only a couple of months old. In fact, we've moved quite fast in implementing what is a very good plan, the Transitional Stabilization Program, TSP as we call it, over the next 2 years, which will then create the right platform for longer-term economic growth towards Vision 2030. So it's only 2 or so months old, this economic plan. What was happening before is that the president was finishing off the mandate left over from the previous president, Robert Mugabe. That's what happened. But the economic reform agenda started on the 4th of October.
Our president is saying South Africa will see how best to assist. Are the reports correct that recently you came to South Africa and asked for billions desperately needed, and that was not granted?
But we continue to cooperate with South Africa at different levels, political, within SABC. South Africa is Zimbabwe's major trading partner. We already have a financial relationship between our central banks in terms of running intra-central bank, credit lines. So this is normal. So our discussions with South Africa are within that broader economic cooperation. We're having discussions, and as the president of South Africa said, Mr. Ramaphosa, that South Africa will look at ways on how to further deepen that financial engagement and see how South Africa can support Zimbabwe. So this is ongoing. There's no finality in our discussions at all. And therefore, the reports perhaps were rather premature in the sense that this has been denied. This is ongoing discussions that we have at the moment.
How much do you need to survive this period?
No, it's not about survival. Really, it's about dealing with the issues around clearing our arrears. The arrears at the moment for the World Bank and the African Development Bank, which is what is critical. We need about $1.8 billion, so as to make sure that we can clear those arrears for the World Bank and the African Development Bank. And then just by doing that, we will open up additional credit lines globally and get Zimbabwe back onto the international community once again, in terms of financial engagement.
Finally, what does it mean for Zimbabwean people? You say you're going to look at the currency, obviously try and deal with dollar shortages, the bond notes haven't worked. You're going to look at that and try and create jobs. But what about Zimbabweans in the meantime? What about the cost of fuel causing the protests?
No, the cost of fuel did not cause the protests. Basically, the protests were planned well before fuel prices went up. If you'd been reading or following the media and what was being pronounced, if you look at the fuel thing, it was really announced well after that plan was announced in terms of protest. The protest basically, mind you, you do get this in South Africa as well, that this is also wage negotiation season. So government employees are out there negotiating hard. The private sector employees will be doing the same. As government, we've said we're going to cushion, the public sector employees by giving them $300 million as to see them through, and also put in place a hardship allowance for the next 3 months. So we're doing everything we can to cushion them during this period. On the fuel issue, our fuel is not the most expensive in the world. That report is erroneous. In fact, our fuel in US dollar terms is about just over $1. Before, fuel was being bought for about 40 cents and then traded on the market for huge profits. That arbitrage is what we try to eliminate. Also, we've offered, by the way, a rebate to those companies that are operating in the productive sector, so they don't have to increase their prices. So this fuel increase does not add to inflation. We're offering all of that to stabilize prices, to make sure that Zimbabweans enjoy the right level of prices. Also, government has introduced a government-owned buses where commuters are paying only $1 for a trip, as opposed to what they're beginning to pay from private operators. So government is doing everything it can to make sure that there is no or very little transmission of any fuel increase into final prices and inflation.
All right, thank you for your time tonight. That was Zimbabwe's Finance Minister Mthuli Ncube speaking to us from the World Economic Forum in Davos, confirming that the government there wants 1.8 billion rand. It owes international lending agencies. That's the $1 billion, correct myself. That's the arrears that he's talking about on the global stage, putting a lot of pressure on the country, but saying there is a plan and basically it'll all be all right in the end. We'll keep on following developments in Zimbabwe.